conceived by fire, birthed from ash, an abomination given flesh, the corrupting flame. Dear Snails, in this diary I'm going to present to you my observations of corruption within the Earth realm. You snails will also see the creation of a new type of deity known as a demon. 86 years after the fall of Kata, the state, Ikapo, tried their hand at expansion. Ikapo moved along the Gulf of Taumaka that they were so privileged to live around. They eventually came to a land that would be known as Maya-i Kapasahasa, a lush forest prone to dry summers and wet winters, with temperatures rarely dropping below zero. It seemed like the perfect place for a settlement, so a settlement was built. These people, however, were not the first to live here. The name Mai Kapasasa is a translation of the name Maya Kasasaka from the Maya Kasasaka people, who, as the season changed, eventually returned. These people are migratory, spending the wet seasons in the forest and the dry up the river. Relationships between the groups were difficult to define. Communication was rough, fights broke out, but no one was particularly hostile to each other. When the seasons changed, the Mayakasaka people would leave only to return the next year to find the settlement had grown. One year was especially dry. The Mayakasaka people tried to warn the settlers to leave, but they would not listen. A dust storm brought with it lightning that gave birth to a massive fire. Fire was common to these lands, enough so that the environment relied on them. This year, however, the environment had changed. The Ikapo people had turned the forest into a plains, the fields into farmlands, and in return for this food, the fire turned their settlement into charcoal. Nearly everything was destroyed, and many lives were lost. Over the ash, new homes had to be made, but the price was more of the land was deprived of life. The Mayakasaka people returned to find the land destroyed. However, the worst was yet to come, because under the ash, something was growing. A few of those lost in the flames had begun their summoning, burning away their souls to become devils. This many individuals molting so closely caused them to interrupt each other. This caused them to merge, becoming one devil made from multiple sources of flesh, the imperfect abomination of ash. The next season, when the air was dry, another fire broke out, this time with the devil of ash wandering the smoke. By the time the Mayakasaka people returned, the settlers were all gone, and the land was in a state far worse than it's ever been. Only briefly did one get a view of this devil, which they named Yamozibomo, which means Ashbringer. Yamozibomo is a long devil with many limbs to assist it in moving across any terrain. Its flesh is highly fire retardant, allowing it to travel through the wildfires unscathed. When the seasons are wet, Yamozibomo spends its time underground, only to rise once it is dry. It has a collection of various openings in the front of its body. The primary mouth consumes flesh, wood, and other flammable substances to create a microbiome for a fungus to grow inside it. It releases spores out with the smoke. These spores will embed themselves into the respiratory system, causing difficulty breathing, excessive coughing, and most interestingly, a buildup of a yellow flammable liquid. The individuals infected becoming living firestarters for whenever the devil decides to rise and feed once again. This is not the end of the suffering for those who become infected, for if left alone, corruption begins. The fungus will feed off the soul of its victim, storing it for the devil. But if Yamos Zibomo never shows, The fungus will force the infected to come to it. The fungus will overtake the body, turning the mortal into a demon. The fungus slowly morphing the body. The legs will be trapped and fused together. This forces the demon to crawl, constantly leaking its flammable liquid across the ground. Once the demon makes it to the devil, they'll merge into it, its body becoming one with Yamo Zibomo. Any part of it that still remains mortal will be consumed and burned. The Maya Kasasika people have lost a lot to this devil, but as the fires get worse every year, there's been a movement of some families no longer returning to these lands and sticking to living upriver. What was once an event you would see every decade now comes every year, and every year Yamozi Bomo travels to new lands. The land dies when the devil passes in an inferno. The best hope for the earth realm is this devil's death. As it does not crave for balance, it only craves to feed. Many will die before that time comes, and I wonder in what state the earth realm will be in. Thank you for reading, snails. Thank you for listening, snails. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask them. And for the most curious of you, there is always much more to learn. Signed, Dragonfly.